everybody, Hunter back again for, what part are we on? I think we're on part 4 of the resin casting tutorials that I've been working on for you guys. And I went ahead and took the molds out of the mold boxes that we made in the last video. And I've also already poured a test piece. And I guess to start off with, I'll show you how that come out. This one has already been taken, cast, and pulled out of the mold, cleaned up, and painted. And this is what it came out like, which came out real good, real happy with it. Everything looks nice. Just waiting now to get the real bolts, aluminum bolts from RB Motion. And I'm doing the lug nuts, and I'm also doing the 20 perimeter bolts that go around the outside of it. And those will also be in aluminum. So what we're going to do this video is we're going to go ahead and mix up a little bit of resin. We're going to pour it into our molds that we made. And the other thing that we did also is this is the little center cap. And that's what the piece cut off of it that I was telling you about I had back here. So that's how the center caps come out. But when I pull these out of the mold, we'll do that on camera. After we get this resin poured in here, when it hardens up, we'll do another video, and I'll pull it right out of the mold here on camera to show you what it looks like when it first comes out of the mold. And then, like I say, when you're done the cleanup or whatever, this is what it'll come out like. So we'll go ahead and pan the camera down here, and we'll get started on this one. And like usual, excuse my workbench because I've been very busy here lately with a lot of odds and ends, and trying to get some work done on this Camaro project. So the workbench is a little bit of a mess, but we're making progress, so that's the main thing. Okay, what we're going to do this time around is, as you can see, we have the molds here that we've already pulled out of the boxes, and this was the one we put in the bottom of the cup, which is the wheel center, and this one here was the one we did in the blue modeling clay. And that's how it came out. And when you flip it over, of course, when you pour these, they're sitting like that, and everything will self-level. So now when you get ready to do your molds or your castings, everything's sitting level and upright, and you're good to go. So we're going to be using the Alumilite. This is part A, and this is part B, and these get mixed 1-to-1. And what I like to do is, I found out in the past that with the Alumilite and a couple other resins that I've tried, that if you mix up less than about an ounce of material, it doesn't tend to harden properly, or it takes a lot longer to harden. So what I do is I always try to get as many molds sitting on the workbench as I can at one time. And that way, if I mix up, say, an ounce of material, I've got plenty of molds to fill up. And but in this case here, we're only working with 2 because that's all the parts that I'm casting for right now. So I've got marks here on my cup. This first line is where I'm going to put part A to, and the second line is where I'll put part B to. And then we'll mix it up and we'll get it poured in here. So here we go. We're going to put part A in the cup. And I've already shook these up prior to the video, so make sure you do that. And like I say, this here, you're going to end up with a little bit of waste when you're doing this, because you want to use, like I say, an ounce or more, which actually makes it, if I can see the cup here, I ain't got enough of part A in there yet. But if you mix an ounce, you are going to waste some of it unless you have plenty of molds to fill up. So, you know, just be aware of that, but it saves you from having problems later on down the road. So we've got part A in there. Now we're going to drop part B in there as soon as I splash it all over everything here. And we'll bring that up to our line. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And of course we got our wooden stick, and we're just going to stir this around. And you want to stir this until it's a even color, and you'll be able to tell because as you're stirring it, you'll see the clear part A kind of interact with the part B. So you just want to kind of stir it around and get it all mixed up real good until it looks like sort of like a light honey color is what it looks like if you're using the Alumilite. There's some other resins out there, and you can also tint this stuff too. They make they sell tinting material for it. It's a liquid, and I've used it in the past a little bit on a couple small things, and you got to be very careful with how much you put in because it does affect the ratio of your two A and B parts. Alright, so we've got that mixed up now. Everything's looking good there. So we're going to go ahead and start pouring. As soon as I find a spot for this stick, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and pour the wheel mold first. And like, you know, we did before, you just kind of want to let this drop in. You don't want to pour it real fast. So that way you don't trap air bubbles or anything in it. And I have used this stuff before where I've been pouring it and it's hardened up as I'm pouring it. That's one of the drawbacks, I think, of this style of Alumilite. It doesn't give you a lot of working time. So if you're going to try this stuff, be aware of that sometimes it will set up right as you're pouring it out of the cup here. I usually like to pour it until, you know, it just kind of drops out. And there we go. And like I say, you can see what's left in the cup there. We used about half of what we mixed up, and it is now kicking. You can see it hardening up there in the cup. It's starting to turn that tan color, and a lot of heat comes off of it. So, and as you can see on the wheel here, on the wheel center, it's still the honey color. It hasn't kicked yet. Now, that's the one thing about mixing up an ounce or more, is because you want to get the mixture started to react in the cup, and then when you put it in here, when you have a thin mold like this or a thin casting, it's going to take longer because you don't have as much heat in there. As you can see, the little center cap, it's already setting up, it's already kicking. But we've got a little bit of cloudiness right over here, but the rest of this mold is still the honey color. So that's one thing you have to get used to. And if they tell you it's like a, what is the demold time on this? Demold time is 5 to 10 minutes. So sometimes when you're pouring a small, thin casting like this, give it a half an hour before you try to take it out of the mold. And another thing is, even though they say 5 to 10 minutes on demold time, if you're doing something thin, you have to be careful with it, because 5 or 10 minutes, it's still going to be flexible. And as thin as these wheel castings are that I'm doing, as you're trying to get it out of the mold, you can deform it. So it's better, you know, you're better off just to go ahead and put it in there and slide that over to the side of your workbench and do whatever you have to do, and a half an hour later come back to it and go ahead and take it out of the mold. So that's what we have as far as using the Alumilite A and B casting resin here. And when I get done with these cups, I just toss them in the trash can with the extra after it's hardened up there a little bit. And we've got it in the mold. We're going to let that set up. The next video, we'll come back and we'll demold these. I'll show you what they look like when they first come out of these molds, and a couple of little cleanup procedures that I do. And before I go, I'd like to also say that there was somebody that came in and asked about painting this material, and was had a question about it being a silicone mold. Now, that is actually a very good question. On these small parts that I do in these one-piece molds, I do not use a mold release. And if anybody out there has got some resin parts in before from the aftermarket, if somebody is using a silicone-based mold release, it can be a bear to paint. I've had people tell me, you know, you can use it, put it in all these different type of cleaners. You can use Wesley's bleach white on it, and this and that and the other. And I did an experiment one time with a simple casting, and I used some of the silicone mold release. And what I found is that mold release actually wicks into the casting, the resin. When you're pouring it into the mold and it starts to activate and kick, it kind of, I guess, gets into the pores of it, and kind of mixes in the resin itself, and you can clean that stuff all day long and the silicone just keeps coming to the top. So that's why I do not use a mold release when I'm using just these simple one-piece molds. I do use a mold release, and I have it over at the spray booth area now. When we come back for the next part, I'll show you what I use, and you won't have any problem with paint sticking to your castings when you pull them out. Now, on this wheel center that we already did here, this was actually pulled out of the mold. It was cleaned up. I went and cleaned up the holes, re-drilled some things, and just made sure everything was nice and clean and all the stuff was beveled. And I took this directly over to the spray booth, and this is actually a gold metallizer that's on here, and I sprayed the metallizer directly over top of the resin, and there's no primer on it. There's nothing on it. All I did was just wipe it off with one of my shop towels and went over there and sprayed it. And, as you can see, you can rub your fingers on it and nothing happens. This does actually have a coat of semi-gloss clear from Tamiya on it now. So, but no issues at all with fish eyes or anything like that. So just because you're using a silicone rubber, that is not the problem that creates the fish eyes in your paint. That problem comes from the mold release that's silicone based. So just wanted to get that across. I forget who asked me that question or made mention of that. And there was somebody else that came on the last video and was telling me about a product that you just basically heat up in the microwave and you pour it over your master. I've heard of that type of product before, and I'm about ready to order some of it. And we're going to give it a test and see how we like it. I think it's called Cosmo Mold or something like that. But after you make the mold with it, you actually can put it back in the microwave and it will turn back into a liquid and you can pour it and make another mold. So I'm kind of curious how well it works. It's a little bit on the expensive side, but as I do some tests with it, if I like it, we'll go ahead and do a tutorial on that just to give you another option. So stay tuned for that coming up here probably a couple months or so, something like that. So that's all we've got for this part. I want to thank everybody for watching, and especially everybody that's been following the series so far. And like I say, I'm by no means an expert in resin casting. I do just enough to get me in trouble. But, it works for the stuff that I do here. Sometimes I have to redo molds. Sometimes I have to redo castings. Sometimes when I pull apart from the mold, it needs to be cleaned up and, finish work done to it. But, it works great here at the workbench, and that's what these videos are for somebody that just wants to do a simple part or, recreate multiple parts of something. That's what all this tutorial series is for. So, again, thank everybody for watching and supporting Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.